Are you looking to upgrade your rings, get into something that is a little beefier, easier to install, and help you keep your reticle lined up while tightened down? I'm going to show you a new set of scope rings that I've been using for a while that I think might just be the ticket for you. Let's go take a look. And this is it. This is the Ivey Shooting FX fixed mount. I have a couple of them. I've been running a solid black one with my March scope for a while, since, I don't know, sometime near the end of last year when I got the March. But I was able to get a gray anodized one, which will beautifully match up with the gray on my March scope. And I thought, well, since I'm switching it out, I would give you guys an up-close look. Now, Ivey has been in the mount game for a long time, and he has been dealing with ELR scope mounts, which he does this adjustable base thing that is pretty amazing. I've played with it, and for the guys that have used it or seen it, you will understand what I mean. It allows you to make an adjustment without using your turrets. It is click positive. It's pretty amazing. Anyway, he was getting a lot of requests from PRS, F-Class, bench rest, stuff like that, to make a non-adjustable, just a fixed base. It took him a while, and like I said, around summer, a friend of a friend said, hey, you should really try these mounts out. And I am a big fan of, solid one-piece mounts. And I said, sure, let's give it a go. And I have been just floored with the production value on them. And we're going to take a look at them here. So let's show you what you've got. Now, this is a slightly heavier base than you're probably used to. So you have a one-piece setup. It runs about 11 ounces. So, if you're weight conscious, look, it may not be for everybody. In F-Open, I haven't had any problem with my 30-inch barrels and a Magesta scope making weight. It's close, but I haven't had any problem making weight. There are a couple things about his scope mount. In fact, I'll pull this out, that I will show you that are starting to show up in more. I will say I've seen more of this kind of thing. He's been doing it for a long time, which he does call it like basically an indexed scope ring. So not only is the top plate made from the same as the bottom, but it is identified, which I know, again, we've seen on some other scopes, but he also uses these index pins. So there is no way for me to put the wrong cap on the wrong side, even if the index marks line up. And there are separate index marks on both sides, so I can be very confident that I am getting the right piece together. The other thing that really makes his system unique is that, and I'm going to move this out of the way for just a second here. So what really makes this unique is that, and I'm going to exaggerate it here, but what you're going to want to do, and I'm trying to think the best way to explain this, for anybody that's mounted a scope, I have to say, the worst thing is trying to figure out tightening from left to right. Sometimes you end up with a little bit of gap on one side and more gap on the other. Sometimes you end up, I've used feeler gauges, I've used calipers. I know a lot of guys have done that. And it always seems like no matter what you do, there's never going to be an exactly perfect mount left to right. The other problem that comes into play is if you are using a standard set of scope mounts and you have your reticle perfectly level, you take it out, you plumb bob it, whatever method you're using, and you start torquing down the cap screws, inevitably, when you do that final torque on one side, it's going to pull the scope a little bit. And I think a lot of people, if not most people, tend to bias their scope a little bit so that that final torque pulls it to plumb, which is honestly pretty silly. Now, obviously there are ways you can go really, really slow, and you can probably keep that in check. But no matter what, it's really tough to keep everything level and keep everything plumb when using a standard set of scope rings. But here's how his differ. You actually torque one side down completely to about 25 inch-pounds, and then you're going to torque the left side down to whatever your scope manufacturer settings are. In my case, I do about 18 inch-pounds, 16 to 18 inch-pounds. On my Leupold, I would do about, Leupold goes heavier, it's like 22 or 24 inch-pounds. Anyway, the left side is going to contain the torque. And one of the things that we've talked about in the numerous conversations I've had with him and other scope manufacturers is that torquing cap screws is definitely going to be, it's something where you're getting a lot more clamping force than you realize. So even at 15 or 16 inch-pounds, there is a tremendous amount of clamping force that is going to prevent that scope from moving. But nevertheless, you're going to about 22 to 25 inch-pounds. I do 25 on one side, and then scope manufacturer torque setting on the other. So the other thing to note is that he uses a standard half-inch nut here, and it is going to give you a nice clamp here. These are going to torque down to 65 to 70 inch-pounds and are really going to sink in there nicely. I like having this now that I've played with it. I haven't had a set of half-inch nuts for a long time, but I think it does take out some of the question about, okay, if I've got multiple screws on a side, what order do I screw them in, stuff like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with either method. I've certainly used both, been successful with both, but it is definitely simpler to have just a single half-inch nut on that, although it does mean that, of course, I have to make sure I carry a half-inch nut with me. But when I get to a hotel or something, it really does help make that process a lot simpler in terms of getting things back together. So let me bring this back over here, and we're going to go ahead. Now, I'm not going to do the entire mounting process because obviously I do have to still take it to the range and get it plumbed up. And that's super easy, again, because I only have to loosen the left side of this to move it around. But let me do this, and I'm going to bring the camera around just a little bit. Okay, so now you can see what we got going on here. And I'm going to put, let's see, that cap's going to go there. And this cap's going to go here. And I'm just going to loosely get everything started, make sure nothing's weird. You never want to cross-thread anything. And scope mounts, there's a lot of good scope mounts out there. I mean, there really are. It's not like there's one scope mount that really prevails over the others. I think what it comes down to is, what do you have confidence in? What helps you get your optics mounted up the way you want? Making sure that you have a scope mount that is not going to be crushing or influencing your scope in any way. There's a lot of things that go into it. All right, now that I've got everything started, I'm just going to get it to where it's barely feeling like it wants to engage tightly. And even when it's like this, because we are going to be torquing down one side, I don't have to worry about doing anything to the other side. Now, currently, with the way his mounts are made, there's no MOA in the scope base. I don't think, based on talking to him, there's any plans to introduce any kind of, real MOA 20, 40, whatever. Most of that can be accomplished through your base. But because of that, you can switch these around front to back. In my case, I would rather have the nut screws on this side away from my port or my bolt or anything else, just because it's one more thing that could get in the way. So I've got the bolts on this side here. Now I've got everything just lightly cinched down, and then you can see I can still move the scope a little bit. Now, obviously, when I get to the range, I'm still going to loosen it up a little bit, and then I'm going to get it arranged where I want it, and then I'm going to cinch it down. And at that point, when I torque down this side, I am not going to lose my vertical. Look, I'm not a physics major. I just know that when clamping this side down 100% and then clamping this side down, I have not lost my reticle being plumb. So I really like that. So what I'm going to do here, just before I get out to the range, I'm going to just loosen this up a second here because I forgot. So we have a little bit of movement in here. And I just want to make sure that I have an equal distance. So about a finger here and about a finger here. You never want to be too close with your scope mounts to either the eyepiece, either side of the turret, or to the front where you start to get your angle out towards your objective. You always want to try to keep it, I try to keep at least, half an inch on each side. I mean, there's been some scopes where I've had some struggles, but if you get too close, you do potentially risk a little bit of damage. So I'm just going to get this pretty close, and I would say that's right about it. Now, right now, all I care about is getting this thing cinched down. I will get to the range. It's raining pretty hard here, and I'm not going to go set up a plumb bob out in the rain. So I'm just going to wait till I get to the range, and it'll make my life a little bit easier. I've plumbed guns both places. So all I'm going to do is just cinch down all of the screws. Okay. And that's just to make sure nothing comes loose or moves too much in my case when I get it to the range there. But again, process-wise, when I get to the range, what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen all 12 screws. I am going to get everything plumb. I am then going to torque down the right side, and I'm going to do that to about 25 inch-pounds or 25 inch-pounds with my torque wrench. And then I am going to torque down this side to about 16 or 17 inch-pounds per the March scope. At that point, I'm done. That's it. So there you go. That is the Ivey FX standard scope mount. Mounting wise, if you do get one of his adjustable scope bases, it's exactly the same setup here. It's simply in the base where you're seeing the adjustment. So the clamping and everything is exactly the same. Like it's the exact same scope setup, just without the adjustment on it. So anyway, thought you guys would like to see that. If you're looking for a base, he does have them in stock. They come in a multitude of colors. I don't remember, but in my head, I want to say, in fact, let me look at his website because I don't think he actually charges extra for the colors. I'm trying to remember here. So if I go and I want to add to cart and I choose a color, yeah, literally they're the same color no matter what you order. So he's got black, he's got Vortex, which is kind of a darker brown, FDE, we have an ODG, and we have a gray. So those are all really good colors. This is the, which one is this? This is the gray. Okay, and you can see it matches up a little bit better to my March scope than my black mount did. So here's the black mount, just as an example. And the black wasn't bad because it matched up with the turrets, but I do kind of like the fact that it's a pretty close match on the gray. So I don't know, something different. Heck, I'd probably put green on there if I had them. But I decided to get the gray. So hope you guys have a good one. It's always great talking to you. Get out there and shoot. We'll talk soon.